Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for...
It's election day coming! UnSpun.
Happy birthday to you.
No.
Happy birthday,
Stop.
Eve, George.
Eve, yes, that's right.
Eve.
I know,
Yes.
right? Crazy.
And we will be talking again on your happy birthday Boxing Day. Because we're going to UnSpun on Sunday, right?
We'll do a special early episode, because then we'll take next week off after all this and talk about the results. If maybe there won't be a result for Vancouver, who knows? We'll talk about the results and what that might mean for spin in Vancouver and Surrey and all these other places, positive or negative.
How many episodes have we done about this election?
Well, ever since the wood chipper story ended, remember that one?
That was in person. That was when we were in person.
That's when we first launched the show. That was the big hot story at that time in the legislature in Victoria. 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago, 191 episodes. We're in 191 today. That's crazy. I think we're the longest lasting local podcast in Canada, I would say. And most episodes. It's been crazy. This is, there's been the unending amount of material for us to do this show this last 4 years, because it's insanity.
Everything.
Will the insanity go away after this election? I don't know.
Remember when you said, vividly I remember when you said, I don't know, hopefully we got as much to talk about tomorrow. And we've literally had so much every day that because we try and keep this podcast to 30 minutes, right? So it's a tight and bright, no spin, our opinions coupled with the facts and news that we can dig up as news hounds that we are, as both of us being journalists and radio hosts. So let's dive in on the civic election now. We are in the final stretch here, the home stretch, as it were. How do you see things shaping up? Because we're starting to see, certainly in Victoria, I was seeing big lineups in early voting. Does that mean something?
Yeah, we have a lot of change elections too. We've got Victoria, New West, where we have the mayor's not running, so it's a big question mark. We have a new political party in New Westminster, which could change the landscape, called Progress, which is, it's the right-wing party, but it's called Progress. It's clever. I think
that's spin, dude. That's spin.
And it looks like a former anchor in Victoria might win the mayor in Victoria. So it's going to be interesting in those two cities to see what happens. Of course, we have Vancouver and Surrey. But yeah, the lineups, from what I understand, is in New West, certainly in Vancouver. Last night I walked by Yaletown, line out the door. People go, I guess we're going to have a great turnout. But actually, generally, we had record turnouts in the last election for the advance polls. Because people are learning about them every election, you sort of go, I can go, and you sort of learn that this is something you can do. The problem is it's generally the people who would have voted anyways. They're like the dedicated people who vote. And so they're showing up early just to get it done, because they're like, I'm going to vote, so I'm just going to go early.
I did that.
I don't have to worry. Yeah, that's the people who vote show up early. So as it showed in the last election, the actual numbers went down. And so I don't think it's indicative of what's going to happen overall for the numbers, because if you still walk around and ask anybody if there's an election, that 90% of the people you walk up to in any city will say, "What? There's an election coming on Saturday? Really? What election?" It's sad, but it's true.
It is true. Okay, before we get into Vancouver, because we got a lot to chew on in BC's biggest city, I just want to point to Surrey, because Brenda Locke is the front runner. Doug McCallum, much beleaguered. I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on there. Sit in second place. But the big piece of that is we're still sitting where Doug McCallum's Surrey Police, municipal police, is building and growing, and the RCMP are still there. So what the taxpayer in Surrey is dealing with right now is a double dip. And there's like this push either way between these two. You'd think they'd all work together in transitioning, because we're that far down the line, but that doesn't seem to be the case. And Brenda Locke, the front runner, says, if I win the mayor's office, I am getting rid of the municipal police plan and going back to what we had. There's a lot on the line here.
I love it when these mayoral candidates say they're going to do something. You need a majority of the people that, in the council to support you if you have that thing. So depending on what happens with the other councillors, will she bring those like-minded people along, or will McCallum lose and McCallum's people win? Anything could happen, I suppose. That's why these slates matter. But I think we talked about Brenda Locke winning several weeks ago, as I think I mentioned that she was probably the front runner.
You did.
But what I'm surprised at is how well McCallum is showing up in some of the polls, which is one of the things that comes down to, and we'll talk about Vancouver as well, is how that impacts people's impulses on election day. When you get campaign teams really hate too much data getting out unless it's going to help them get people out. If it doesn't, because two things happen, and this is the case in say, Surrey. Let's use that as an example right now. Okay, so now people are seeing, we really have two front runners. There were a lot of people running against McCallum. It was a real mixture of people. And what might help this might happen is a lot of people, it'll galvanize the vote for either or both Brenda Locke or Doug McCallum. And so you could see McCallum surge. Some of those people who can't imagine voting for Brenda Locke will say, you know what, I don't want to throw away my vote on the other three people running. So I'm going to go with McCallum because I don't want Brenda Locke.
Going with the devil I know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's never good for a campaign team to be a front runner and have that announced by every single poll. It's especially when you have a real mixture of people where you have undecided as you do in most of the communities, certainly in Vancouver and Surrey.
Okay, so what you just said there, when the loudness shifts from what we've been saying for the past couple of years, which is this election is Kennedy-Stewart's to lose as the incumbent and the only one running on the left, and all of a sudden the data showing the Ken Sim ABC party going out in front, does that hurt his momentum?
Big time.
Okay.
Big time. We don't know how well. It depends on how well Kennedy-Stewart's people get the vote out. So those lineups, who knows? We don't know. Are those people that Kennedy-Stewart's NDP supporters are driving to the polls early? We won't know until after the election what kind of results, what happened there. Or is it Ken Sim people, or is it people who are so mad, or is it Colleen Hardwick people who are just pissed and they want to vote? It's probably an older demographic, so I'm guessing it's either Hardwick or Sim supporters generally, because they vote and they show up and they like to get things done early. I think that, but to show that Ken Sim is so much farther ahead in some of the polls, some of them really far ahead, that really is bad news for Ken Sim as far as now the NDP. I'm not on any of their mailing lists. Maybe you are. I don't know, but I certainly am on I think actually I'm on one, but they have their other lists that they have of people they know vote. They're real core supporters in the city that have shown.
I get everybody's.
But they have their list. They have one list, which is a generic list, and then they have a real list that's people that vote, and they will literally be calling. I mean, NDP MLAs right now are probably on the phones calling their constituents saying, "You got to go vote for Kennedy-Stewart right now. You got to go do it. Otherwise, you're going to have a right-wing government in Vancouver. Go vote. Go vote." I imagine every single MLA in Vancouver for NDP is doing that calling to their constituents right now, along with their supporters, manually calling all the people they know that voted for them in the elections, provincial elections. They're calling those people saying, "Thank you very much for your vote. I need you to help me out here. I need you to go support. Otherwise, our progressive policies, blah, 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 blah." So that's what we don't know. I haven't seen that reported. I haven't seen any rumors, but that's what they should be doing. What I'm shocked at, and I talked about this last week, really is I have not seen a Kennedy-Stewart campaign at all. I mean, I haven't seen him. I've seen a few.
I got a robocall. I got a
robocall.
And there was a thing yesterday that I got a press release for that was like, join him. And I can't remember who he was with. It was somebody else. These two men will be available for questions and photo opportunities. And I just saw that line of these two men, and I'm like, this was written by a dude. This was written by a dude. But he was going to lay out his 50-day plan, his first 50 days. And I thought, really? That's the press release? And that's how you're positioning this? This is the spin you're going to put on it? Because you just did a full term as mayor. And now you're going to make a promise of how you're going to magically fix everything in the first 50 days. How dumb do you think we are? Like that's, and can I go back to the NDP endorsement piece?
Yeah. Double-edged sword.
I live in David Eby's riding. Yep. And I have watched him over the last 12 years since I got back from Toronto. I've been a part of the messaging, for lack of a better way. I'm not a dyed-in-the-wool NDP voter. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool nobody voter. I'm the undecided mushy middle. I'm the mushy middle. But you got to win my vote. And I'm telling you what, there's a lot that I like about David Eby. He makes himself available to me when I want to ask him the hard questions. It's no holds barred when we have a conversation. He comes from a very consistent position. And his endorsement of Kennedy-Stewart changed how I think about him. No, I'm telling you, it changed how I think about David Eby. Because did you read, I'm putting you on the spot here because we didn't talk about this prior to, we have our little chat before we start the podcast. Did you read Kirk LaPointe's article in Business in Vancouver? Okay.
The ending was, I tweeted that out, which I thought was basically a tickle and a slap to Ken Sim, the whole thing. Because it was like, he's when you're faced with basically, it's like, who else is there? That's what one of his campaign teams said to Kirk at the end. It's like, well, why should, because there's, it's just it's good enough, basically. It's like, oh my God, we've come to this point where it's like, well, what other choice do we have?
But I like this election. There are two things, and full disclosure, Kirk LaPointe is a friend of mine. He's a friend of yours. We like Kirk. I worked with him at Roundhouse Radio, so he's been a colleague. I like that he started this column. You can find it at biv.ca. I think it's businessvancouver.ca. Mm-hmm. He started by basically, just so you know, I ran for mayor. I was under this party. I know this person in here's how. I know this person in here's how. I know this person in here's how. Now I'm going to tell you how I feel about the candidates. And the first thing that he really explained was the real big issue that I have first and foremost with the current mayor, Kennedy-Stewart, is how he didn't lead in the craziest time of our lives as a global community with this pandemic. And the way Kirk wrote it resonated with me in that's why, because I don't tell people how to vote. I can't tell you, George, how many people have reached out and said, just tell me who to vote for. And I'm like, I can't. I am telling you who I'm not voting for, because I cannot vote for somebody who, right when we're hit with go home, stay home, we're screwed, your jobs are done, everybody, you all might die.
As Kirk pointed out, we ended up having a big surplus that year in Vancouver.
Right, because he got it wrong. But in that moment, his leadership moment was, we're screwed, we're bankrupt, and we might not be able to pay the police. So it's like, okay, great.
Well, he didn't want to pay the police at that time.
It was nuts, man. It was crazy time. So anyway, so when people ask me on that, the other thing I wanted to touch on with you, spin-wise, you're so great at this. This is why we call it UnSpun Podcast, right? We were talking about on Twitter.
Is that why we called it? No, kidding.
Smart ass.
4 years. I had no idea.
4 years. I didn't know. The name we came up with in 3 seconds. It was your lovely partner, Amanda. The piece of this with Justin McElroy, who we love, CBC reporter Justin McElroy, he's been tweeting some stuff about polls and what have you and whatnot. And I really found it interesting because one poll seemed like, wow, Colleen Hardwick is way closer to the top two than we thought. And then as Justin does, he explains that. And it's like, first and foremost, that's a poll that was commissioned by the Hardwick team people. And they removed undecideds and they removed so-and-sos and they removed people who, whatever, fill in the blank. Take out all the people that...
The intention was to drive to motivate Hardwick voters to, she does have a chance. Then I will vote for her.
That spin. And I'm glad for Justin putting it out there and explaining it. But it was like, I didn't see, because it was like 46%, not quoting the numbers exactly, but it was like 46% of voters say they're voting for Ken Sim, and 42% of voters say they're voting, or 36 say they're voting for Kennedy-Stewart, and then 21% say they're voting for Hardwick, which every other poll I'd seen, the top two in Sim and Stewart were within just a couple of percentage, and Hardwick was down here with Mark Marison, like in the maybe double digits. Like it was one of those. So are you prepared to look at what we might see unfold on Saturday, tomorrow, in terms of how this might play out?
Well, I think it will be. No, I mean the prediction is very iffy. I still think it might be close, but I think you could see a sweep of ABC if some of the data that we're seeing, if that momentum is there, if Kennedy-Stewart's vote doesn't show up. This morning he was Burma shaving in Yaletown, and Burma
What's
shaving
that mean?
It means when people stand in a corner and they're like jumping around with their signs.
Right.
It's it's a standard thing you do, and he was in Yaletown, and he had 4 people with him, and on a pre-election day, you should have 40 people with you, especially for the mayoral person out there Burma shaving. Generally, Burma shaving is what you do with your campaign team and your people to keep them busy on run out of things to do. And it's a way to get those drivers who are to get them to remember to vote. It's a basic advertising. So that was interesting.
And remember the sign, because they're holding up the signs, right? I remember last election, it was like union workers were given the day off with pay if they went and stood on a corner during rush hour in morning. What's it called?
Yeah. And that might happen tomorrow morning. That could happen tomorrow morning, I suppose.
Right.
But, and so there is, and then you look at all the campaigns are now attacking Ken Sim. So that means that all their polling must show that he is the problem for them. And that's when, but of course, in any time you're talking about your opposite, the other person, not about yourself, you're losing. I talked about that many months ago when we were talking about elections. And when you start talking about the person you're running against in your messaging, you're losing. You want people to be talking about you because they are afraid of you. And right now, nobody's talking about Colleen Hardwick or Kennedy-Stewart as a threat. They're talking about Ken Sim as the threat, and how our city will be worse off because of that. So that's good news for Ken Sim. But again, it goes back to the machine that NDP may have that we don't know about. Your point about EB, that double-edged sword of endorsements. I think just because you're a provincial NDP may not mean that you're, you look at civic politics differently. I think you look at Colleen Hardwick's slate. You've got Bill Thielman and Colleen Hardwick, and she says she's a federal liberal. Bill is a NDPer, and then she's got a couple of former NPAers, fairly right wing people on there as well. So she's got probably the most diverse slate, I would say, of the candidates. So there might be enough there for NDPers to go, maybe I'll do Colleen. So that's kind of
and that was kind of, and it's not a woman thing when I say this is sort of like Shauna Sylvester in the last election. It's not about her being a woman. I would love to see a woman be mayor. I would love it. What the problem, as you had been saying, in all the months and weeks now leading up to the big election day, tomorrow, October 15th, is how the vote splitting might happen. And we're kind of seeing that. And my issue with people who
when they ask you that question about voting, does anybody ask you, talk about voting slate? I have nobody. Everybody who I talk to is not voting slate on the council.
Nobody wants to vote slate on the council because Vision Vancouver is still a very bad taste in the mouth. So what I say to people is like, please don't do the mishmash of people and everybody should be new because we just trained them. I hope there's a number of really good counselors. I know I voted for a couple who I believe have learned their lessons of agenda voting up to this point, and will try and do the things to knock the priority list in the right order. I hope. I might be wrong, but I'm sure we'll come back to that. But going in, when you take your pen, your Sharpie that they give you, and the extra long ballot, don't feel you must check or circle every option that they give you. Only the people you know. And when you go with the people you know, you actually plump up that vote.
Yeah. The word plump is frowned upon, by the way.
Is it?
Wait, I waited.
Wait, what is it? Why is it frowned upon?
I don't know. It's just a thing that people say. It sounds scammy or something.
Wait it.
Because it's like you're specifically telling people the way to vote some way or something. But when you do this, I
am telling them to vote this way.
It does weight the vote in favor of those people. The math is there. I will say I have a friend named Wade, and he He is Rob McDowell and I, who talk a lot about politics. He was my campaign manager. We're neighbors, we're friends, been friends forever. We talk about politics a lot. And we always think about Wade. He is the test case of the electorate of this province, just because he's not super engaged. He understands some things. He's kind of angry. He's angry about, we know he's kind of angry about this. A lot of the things you go, yeah, that's what people are angry about. He sent me his list and I went, and he said, what do you think of my list? And he said, who else should I vote for? This isn't everybody. And I said, well, you don't have to vote for all 10. And Wade, that list is pretty good. And it was all over the map. And so what I think what was interesting, I think there was only one person on there, I think, that was an incumbent. He really
distaste for it.
People do not want to vote for this council that's in there.
In my head, I know who that is. Right? But you can say because that person probably could have run for mayor. But that's the difference between the councillor, because you've explained this to me so many times, and I think this is a very important piece of the puzzle. The mayor's vote in Vancouver is only one vote. Yep. It's a vote. This huge slate of people is more of an ego party than it is anything else, particularly for those who are just maybe peeling off a couple of votes from actually putting it in a direction that's best for the city. Like I look at it, and that's how I explain it to people when they come at me. And again, I've said, if you want me to look at who you're voting for, I will, but I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, because I'm very much not, I have distaste for the incumbent.
Yeah. It's so what I think is a likely scenario, and I've talked about this before, because ABC is running 7, everybody else is running 6, the parties. So now you've as you just talked about this. So are they going to vote all 7, or that weakens all those 7 votes potentially, unless there's a huge wave that is Ken Sim support. A likely scenario is we have a new mayor, but we have a whole bunch of mixed up council again, and so then Ken Sim ends up in the exact same situation as
with less political experience. He ends up in the exact same position as Kennedy-Stewart but he's a business person, and he's no.
I mean, I never that argument on anybody. I mean, I'm a business person, and running a business is completely different than running.
But what was that like for you to learn?
Can't expect bureaucrats, unless you are an autocracy, a dictator. You can't, and in a weak mayor system, you do not have this power. So if you don't have a majority of council, and even if you do, and Vision had it, moving that dial to change the speed at which bureaucrats move. Come on, there's a word. The bureaucrat, the word is enough to tell you, about speed, and that's not a slam to staff at City Hall. It's just the nature of the beast, and
that's the way it goes.
The big one that Ken Sim talks about is this 100 days and this whole
100 police and 100 mental health. And
oh my God, you don't think Vision tried that with their supermajority? They tried. They did. I was there. We put a whole bunch of money towards permitting and zoning and all that stuff, and they barely move the dial. They barely moved it. If you can't incent, they did, and what they did, they kept raising the price of development costs, and that was worse. So they kind of were trying to fix this, and they're trying to find money, and so to put it into rental housing. So it's those kind of promises are always interesting.
All over the map.
City Hall doesn't run like a business.
Let's flip the switch. Of course, people are going to watch you on CTV. You're going to be a pundit on election night, on your birthday.
Yeah.
Yes. You can follow along George @Affleck. That hurt my earbuds. George_Affleck on Twitter. I'm at Jody Vance on Twitter as well. Jody with a Y, at Jody Vance, at George_Affleck. Follow us along there. UnSpunPodcast.com is where you can like and subscribe, so this podcast comes direct to your inbox. I want to shift away from politics of the municipal sort and talk about the politics of the flu shot. Yes, you heard me right. Oh my God, really?
I saw you guys and you and Linda talking about this on your show last night. Yeah. It's like, why did you add a layer of bureaucracy? So clarify this for listeners and viewers. What's happened? What is going on?
Remember when you used to because I get a flu shot every year.
Yeah,
I'm a daughter of a scientist. Why wouldn't you? I want less flu. I know I'm already going to get sick from the flu because the flu shot doesn't protect you from getting the flu. it protects you from getting a severe flu. And I don't want a severe flu. I want to get through it as fast as I can. I don't like being sick. There you go. We are in for an exponentially worse, we are told, flu season because of 2 years of wearing masks and staying apart. The flu virus has, the variants have changed. Literally, we're getting the same wording and what have you. So ever more important to get your flu shot this year. And that's what the government's saying. Get your flu shot as of October 11th. You will be able to get your flu shot. I'm like, great. I call my pharmacist who I know by name. Flu shot's good, like I do every year. Are they there? And the last 2 years, I've actually called on the day that they got the flu shots. And I was able to, and they're like, yeah, we're not rolling out appointments yet. And I'm like, oh, well, what does that mean? And they're like, well, you can get the private supply, which is pay. And I thought, okay, well, how much are they? And he was like, $20. I said, okay, well, give my son and I our flu shots. I'll pay $40, whatever. Let's do it. I don't have time to mess around is typically how and then I thought, well, is this a private health thing? Anyway, I kind of had that about it. So this year when I said, do you have them? We have supply, but all of our bookings are full and you got to go through the Get Vaccinated site to book. Right. And I'm like, what? Okay. But do you have any private supply or whatever, the ones that I've been getting there? No, we don't have private supply this year. It's all through the Get Vaccinated. I'm like, okay. So I go to Get Vaccinated, I go sign in, same as doing your COVID shot. You get all the options of the pharmacies you can go to. I clicked on absolutely everyone within a 22-kilometer radius, no appointments.
Really?
None. I'm like,
wow.
So it's the Hunger Games for the flu shot now. That's what we're bloody well doing.
Figured out. God, why bother? Like, what is going on? I guess they feel like, oh, we created this great little system for the COVID shot. Let's. I mean, is it a moneymaker? I don't even understand what's going on. It's like, what's the logic?
Are they trying to justify the people they're paying to work in the Get Vaccinated area in this? Like, are they tracking who gets it? Maybe that's it. Are they tracking you? I don't know.
Anyways, if you get the shot, are you supposed to, or they don't submit?
It shows up. It does show up.
Your guest did say that it doesn't have to, or they don't have to file it.
Right.
I thought she said something like that.
Maybe that's it. Yeah. Dr. Anna Wallach, she is amazing, very outspoken family physician who is feeling very frustrated because she's having issues getting it. And then, of course, as happens on Twitter, when you have the discussion on Twitter, people are like, well, I just walked into my pharmacy and I got it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way it should be.
Great.
That's the way I always did it. Or they would say, come back in a couple of hours. We got time. We'll have it ready for you. So, I don't know. There you go. Bureaucracy, right? Government loves creating more bureaucracy. So, when you get into office and you think you can change things, it's like a whack-a-mole. Okay, I'm fixing this over here, and then pops another problem over here. It's and generally, if I go back to this thing on the bureaucracy, and because that's bureaucracies, unions don't like change generally. So they if Ken Sim wins and he gets a majority and he goes in there trying to do some of the things he's talking about, he's going to get a lot of pushback from those unions, and they're going to. Because Sam Sullivan tried it and that didn't work out well for him. So they definitely want to drive the bus when it comes to some of the ways the way they do things, and change is not something a lot of unions like. It's because it's complicated and they have to change the way they do things. So we're going to see. But I don't understand this whole flu shot thing. It's so bizarre to me. It's so bizarre.
It's so bizarre.
Why?
And why indeed?
I got my 4 shot schedules for next week, I think.
Great. So well, good for you. You'll get your flu shot at the same time.
Will I? Oh,
yes, you will.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That'll make me really sick, won't it?
No, actually, Handsome Brad, our executive producer, Brad McLeod, Brad, we call him. He got both his bivalent COVID-19 booster as well as his flu shot on Wednesday, midday, and flew over from Victoria, where he lives, flew over to do our show here in town, and was a little tired, but not bad, considering he got both. He managed the prior COVID shots with no problem. So maybe it's tied to whether or not you get knocked down by the other though.
Yeah, I was never really impacted by them. But
okay, 11 o'clock on Sunday we're meeting.
I know. We'll meet at 11. We'll record. McKenna, one of my team, who does the upload to the audio version. So we'll have it out probably early afternoon on Sunday. It's going to be interesting. I mean, last election we were at CTV, and because we couldn't, we called it before anybody else. Because I said, this guy's done. If he couldn't win by a big chunk, then he was only that close. He still won. Kennedy won by 600 votes, I think, but it was still
657 or whatever
votes, I think, that night. But you kind of see the momentum was not there for Ken Sim last time. We'll see this time. The problem was last time we were so late at CTV that I didn't get the bar. We couldn't get a beer. It's too late to go out for a beer.
Take a six pack. Take a six pack to the studio. Take it to the studio.
You want to go out there, and by the time we go out,
we know what it's like to have the wine. We know how to have the wine and the chips at check. So teach the CTV a little something. Peace out, buddy. Happy birthday. I'll see you when you're way older.
We'll see you Sunday. Go vote, everybody.